I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return. That line appears in the version Abraham Lincoln preserved after his train pulled away from Springfield, Illinois. 4 years later, he returned to Springfield on another train. It was his funeral train, but the farewell remembered today was not waiting on a page when Lincoln stepped onto the platform. He spoke without a prepared text. Only after the train began to move did he try to preserve what he had said. This is the story of that moment, and the complete version written down aboard the departing train. Lincoln had arrived in Springfield on April 15, 1837. He was 28 years old and newly licensed to practice law. Here he built his career. Here he married Mary Todd. Here they bought the only home he ever owned. And here all 4 of their sons were born: Robert, Eddie, Willie, and Tad. By the morning of the farewell, one of those children had already died. Edward Baker Lincoln Eddy died in 1850, just before his 4th birthday. So when Lincoln later said, "Here my children have been born, and one is buried," he was compressing almost 24 years into a single line: marriage, fatherhood, ambition, home, and a child's grave. Lincoln had won the presidency 3 months earlier, but between his election and his departure, 7 southern states had seceded from the Union. A Confederate provisional government had been organized only days before he left Springfield. The country was not yet formally at war, but it was already coming apart. The Lincolns moved out of their house on February 8th and spent their final Springfield nights at the Chenery House. They did not sell the home. They rented and insured it, sold some household goods, and placed their best furniture in storage for an eventual return. On Monday morning, February 11th, one day before Lincoln's 52nd birthday, the president-elect went to the Great Western Railroad depot. Rain was falling. Roughly 1,000 friends and neighbors had gathered around the station. At about 5 minutes before 8, Lincoln made his way through the crowd and climbed onto the rear platform of the passenger car. He turned toward the people, removed his hat, and paused for several seconds until he could control his emotion. The reporters were apparently unprepared. The ALPLM reconstruction says they had been told no speech was planned. Lincoln had prepared no written remarks. Then he began. One archival note before the reading: the critical edition compares 3 principal versions of Lincoln's farewell, and their wording differs. The version you are about to hear is the manuscript Lincoln began setting down soon after the train left Springfield. The motion of the train affected his handwriting, and his secretary, John G. Nicolay, completed the document. It is the version preserved by the Library of Congress. It is not a stenographic transcript of every word spoken on the platform. It is Lincoln's own immediate reconstruction of the farewell written down while Springfield was disappearing behind him. Here it is, complete. My friends, no one not in my situation can appreciate my feeling of sadness at this parting, to this place, and the kindness of these people I owe everything. Here I have been a quarter of a century and have passed from a young to an old man. Here my children have been born, and one is buried. I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return, with a task before me greater than that which rested upon Washington. Without the assistance of that divine being, whoever attended him, I cannot succeed. With that assistance I cannot fail. Trusting in him who can go with me and remain with you and be everywhere for good, let us confidently hope that all will yet be well, to his care commending you, as I hope in your prayers you will commend me. I bid you an affectionate farewell. At precisely 8 o'clock, the train moved away. The surviving manuscript begins in Lincoln's hand and ends in Nicolay's. It still carries the strain of the moment, cramped writing, corrections, and the interruption where one hand gives way to another. The direct Library of Congress transcription reads, "Here I have been a quarter of a century. Many familiar printings change been to lived. Other contemporary reports expand the speech with phrases about the strange, checkered past and the God of our fathers. Their language differs. Their structure does not, but sadness, gratitude, children, death, Washington, Providence, prayer, and farewell. What survives is not one effortless transcript. It is the record of people trying to hold on to words spoken once in rain and steam just before a train carried the speaker away. Lincoln reached Washington on the 23rd of February and took the oath of office on the 4th of March. On the 12th of April, Confederate guns opened fire on Fort Sumter. The task he had compared with Washington's became 4 years of civil war. Lincoln never returned to Springfield alive after his assassination. His funeral train left Washington carrying his remains and those of his son Willie. On the 3rd of May, 1865, the train reached Springfield. More than 75,000 people came to view the president's remains. When Lincoln finally came home, another son came home with him. The following day, Lincoln and Willie were taken to Oak Ridge Cemetery. The child Lincoln meant when he said one is buried had been Eddie. When Lincoln finally came home, another son came home with him. The farewell was uncertainty, not evidence that Lincoln predicted his death. He retained ownership of the house, and the family placed its best furniture in storage for an eventual return. That is what gives the line its power. I now leave not knowing when or whether ever I may return. It was uncertainty when he spoke it. 4 years later, it had become history. Springfield had watched him become Abraham Lincoln. Washington awaited him as president. Between those two places were a few minutes in the rain and a manuscript written on a moving train. Letters of America Archive, primary source history read aloud. What you have heard is the complete Library of Congress trained manuscript version of Lincoln's Springfield farewell address. If this voice meant something to you, subscribe so the next document finds you. And if you want to help preserve the sourcing, reading, and keeping of these voices, you can support Letters of America Archive on Patreon. Tell me whose voice from this war you want to hear next.